welcome again. The American space policy is obviously a very interesting topic for as a part of the general international security and international relations research. This is also a very interesting topic for investigating and researching the American domestic policies and domestic discussions that are going on among the political groups, political parties, the military, the civilian. A very short summary of my presentation. So I have a couple of slides, but I would like to show you probably a number of websites, which are also quite, I think, quite interesting and quite important to understanding. So I'm going to talk about the general political issues, the key official doctrines, the key official documents. I'm gonna say a few words about the military development in the military space policies of the United States. I'm going to talk a little bit about economy, the space economy, which is a growing field of knowledge, a very, very prospective topic for research, if any of you are interested, and probably a few words about the general achievements of the Biden administration. So if everyone has turned off the microphones so that there are no interruptions. When you start researching every field of American policy of any administration, most likely you will have to look at something which is called national strategy in the field of defense, national security, I don't know, space, cyber security, whatever. And this is interesting that Biden administration have not prepared a doctrinal document devoted to space yet. This is probably not as interesting, not as surprising, because if you look at the Trump administration, who also prioritized the space technology issues and who was also very who also considered space to be a very important part of the national security strategy. Donald Trump administration published the National Space Policy, National Space Strategy only in December 2020, basically a few weeks before Trump's resignation. If we compare Biden administration to Trump, so President Biden still has what, like 11 or probably even 12 months ahead to prepare and to publish the national space policy. However, and it was also interesting, very specific only for Biden administration, he published something called a space policy. Yeah, there we go. United States Space Priorities Framework in December 2021. Basically, what is it, like 11 months after he took the office. So this document, I think, let me, if any of you will be interested in the documents or the websites that I will show during my presentation and during my lecture today, I will share it separately with Diana, and we'll probably disseminate it later if any of you will be interested. So this document, United States Space Priorities Framework, is also very specific for Biden administration because this looks very much like many of the issues that Biden administration made compared to Trump administration. If you remember the times, what is it, like 3.5 years ago, Biden administration came to power and this signified a very harsh transformation of American policies because Biden and Trump were on the very radical, ends of the political spectrum, and Biden administration was in a hurry to declare a very harsh turnaround, a very harsh transformation in policies in every sphere, which made Biden administration publish a lot of framework documents in advance, so that it would be obvious where what administration is doing different compared to the Trump administration. And this is compared to when we talk about space policies, this is interesting because the Biden administration did not make a lot of transformation compared to Trump administration. The general, times of the 2010s, 2020s in the space policies in space research were related to, first of all, to the very new situation where the government, American government, has to work out a principally different form of relations with civilian space activities. That is mostly related to a small company called SpaceX, headed by Elon Musk. I'm kidding, obviously. This is not a small company. This is a huge company, but this is the kind of relations where the government is basically losing its monopoly. The government is basically losing its full control over all of the space activities. And it is, the civilian companies such as SpaceX, and this is not the only one. There are many other companies which are basically, at some point, are even more advanced in space research, in space activities compared to the government. The second thing is Biden administration faced a very harsh competition with different international actors, mostly from China. China is a very fast and very rapidly developing its space capabilities. Chinese developments also very much refer to the military actions and military strategy. So, the Biden administration had to compete with China. Compete doesn't mean defeat. It means that the American space industry in general, including commercial and government entities, would have to be more advanced and would have to be more cutting-edge technologies compared to those of the Chinese government, of the Chinese industries. But apart from China, there are also other emerging space powers. Well, obviously Russia. Russia is not an emerging power. Russia is an old school and an old space power, but also India. I'm sorry. Also India, also some other countries. So the space is becoming much more competitive. That's another thing. I'm sorry. And there are a number of countries and a number of technologies which allow something called anti-satellite activities, which are also very important, a very big military challenge. But the Biden administration also has to deal with this challenge, also has to deal with this problem. And I'm terribly sorry. This weather is really killing me. Biden administration had also to deal with this challenge, and also had to do something about the fact that there are powers, not space powers, but there are capabilities of other countries on Earth which may challenge American superiority and which may challenge American leadership in space from Earth, not necessarily from space, but from Earth. So let's have a closer look to the on this document, the framework document, which basically precedes the Biden administration space policy, if such policy would ever be published. I remind you that Trump administration published it just a few weeks before Trump resigned from office. So obviously, United States benefit from space activities. Space is a source of American innovation and opportunity. A lot of this reliance and a lot of this innovation and opportunity capabilities rely on satellites, which improve global navigation. You know that there is a special global positioning system, a network of satellites which ensure navigation on Earth, assisting with crop yield prediction, water management, power grid monitoring, facilitating global telecommunications for applications ranging from banking to education and telemedicine. So I think it would be wrong to just make a list of all the spheres where space technologies are used on Earth, but nonetheless, these are the ones that were mentioned specifically by the administration, by the representatives of the Biden White House staff. So developing space technologies spurs innovation. It creates new industries, it creates new jobs, it creates new forms of revenue for American economy, for American people. This is obviously a growing, part of economy. And obviously, whenever the Biden administration tries to look better, especially during the election campaign, they are saying that the more jobs are created, not necessarily jobs directly connected to space, but jobs related to, the whole space industry, such jobs as such, companies that produce different services and goods for the broader space industry in the United States. Space activities fuel cutting-edge research and technology development, yielding new discoveries that improve the quality of life for people on Earth. Space capabilities help us manage resources, protect people, property, environment from extreme weather events, and address the climate crisis. You know that the Biden administration is representatives of the Democratic Party, which are much more concerned about the climate change and claim that the different activities of humans on Earth are the reason why the climate is changing. So a lot of efforts that they do is aimed at preventing this malign influence on environment and malign influence on on nature. And space technologies are probably critical, the most critical for monitoring the climate change and for probably even addressing certain issues. So satellites collect information to monitor the changing planet, to protect our lands, oceans, atmosphere. Data collected from space helps us improve national preparedness, reduce the impacts of extreme weather, natural disasters, and climate change in a manner that better addresses the needs of vulnerable communities. Obviously, space is a source of inspiration. I cannot remember this. I was not born yet, but you may realize that when the space was open for exploration by Soviet Union and the United States in the 1950s, 1960s, it inspired a lot of culture. It inspired a lot of movies, a lot of authors to write literature, a lot of I don't know, musical experiments and whatever. Basically, that's the times when Star Wars, Star Trek emerged as one of the key, most interesting movies in Hollywood. But nonetheless, space continues to inspire, artists for many different new experiments, and we're gonna talk about this as well. So space as a source of American leadership and strength, which demonstrate American leadership. In this regard, a very special part of American policy is in space is related to the robotic accomplishments and basically developing the different forms of artificial intelligence and robotic forms of exploration and space activities. They mentioned that it unlocks the mysteries of the universe and provide tangible measures of American technological capacity, national ability to execute large-scale complex projects. Space activities broaden and deepen international partnerships. This is also a very important part of Biden policy because Biden administration was very actively developing international cooperation in space with different space agencies all around the world, in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America. Space underpins national security ability to respond decisively to crises around the world. I think this is mostly related to gathering information and raising the resolution of the optics that may get, images from space, images on Earth. So when it comes to the priorities, maintaining robust and responsible U.S. space enterprise. The United States maintain leadership in space exploration and space science. So United States remain a global leader in engineering, pioneering space research that propels exploration of the moon. You know that President Biden made a claim that the United States are going to return on the moon and continue the exploration of the moon. Not only robotic, but also send another humans to the moon. There are a project, I think, delivered and executed by Elon Musk of sending a human to Mars, to planet Mars, and beyond, as they say. So I'm not sure what beyond means, because Mars is already something that seems unreachable at the moment. But nonetheless, this is a very interesting discussion. So the United States plan to advance development use of space-based Earth observation capabilities that support action on climate change, obviously the climate change. The open dissemination of Earth observation data will support both domestic and international efforts to address the climate crisis. The United States will foster a policy and regulatory environment that enables competitive and bargaining of U.S. commercial space sector. This is directly, we're going to talk about this more detailed. This is directly related to the government's regulations about the key developments and the key developments in commercial space sector, not the government, but commercial and civilian space sector. United States will protect space-related critical infrastructure and strengthen the security of U.S. space industrial base, which is quite logical and really critical priority. United States defend its national security interests from the growing scope and scale of space and counter space threats. This is the kind of the part that I've already mentioned about the anti-satellite capabilities, which are developed by certain nations and certain actors in the world. And obviously, United States will invest in the next generation. So the investment goes to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This is so-called STEM research. So the United States are developing these professions in the universities, in the education system, which is critical, obviously, for American leadership. And this STEM, they call it the STEM ecosystem of public and private organizations will leverage space programs to educate the children as part of the improving scientific literacy of Americans, increasing diversity, equity, accessibility, inclusion to the scientific and technological fields. When it comes to the issue of government regulations of the private sector and space activities, there is another very interesting. It's not the kind of the document. I mean, this is not like the law, but this is kind of a document from the White House, which is called the Authorization and Supervision of Novel Private Sector Space Activities. So there is a very boring text about which specific pieces of legislation are going to be reformed, transformed, and renewed. But the basic idea, to my mind, is that the Department of Transportation is becoming a very important actor, a very important player in American space policies, because the American space industry has developed that much that they are starting to develop the space travel. And just like all other forms of transportation, the Department of Transportation is basically responsible for, everything, starting with bicycles and, I don't know, scooters, ending up with planes and high-speed trains. But along with the vehicles used by humans to travel and to transport, the United States are developing the special regulations concerning space travel. And you remember that it was during the Biden administration, I believe, when the three major billionaires in the world, in the United States, have made a travel to space. I'm talking about, obviously, Jeff Bezos and his company Amazon. I believe he was the first one to travel to space. There was he's not American, he's British, but I believe this Virgin companies, what's the name of this billionaire? Um, um, I'm sorry, I must remember this. This is a tough one. Virgin Airlines. He's very famous. He was in a lot of movies. Richard Branson, obviously. Richard Branson, I'm sorry. Richard Branson was also one of the pioneers in space travel, in space tourist. And obviously Elon Musk, whose company SpaceX is also developing a lot of the space travel and space tourism capabilities, which is obviously a very perspective thing to for economy and for the industry. So the regulations, and this is the document that I've opened for you. This is it's not very long, but it's kind of boring. This mostly contains the references to different pieces of legislation which the Department of Transportation will deal with later. What kind of authorities, what kind of powers the Department of Transportation is going to have for this space sustainability, uninhabited space mission. What are the terms? What are the definitions? And basically, Department of Transportation regulates commercial launches and re-entries conducted in the United States and by American entities abroad. It does so consistent with public health, safety of property, national security interests, foreign policy interests of the United States. And the proposal would amend the legislation to define a term human space flight vehicle. Basically, that would be a vehicle including a launch vehicle, re-entry vehicle, habitat, or other object built to operate in suborbital trajectory or outer space, including on a celestial body with a human being on board. A license would be required for a citizen of the United States to operate a human space flight vehicle in outer space. When I read all this in actual legislation, in actual American legislation, it seems like I am a part of some futuristic movie, because I would never, well, I've seen a lot of movies where people were traveling to space just like that, but I would never think that this thing would be regulated by American legislation, and that the president of the United States and different officials such as the Secretary of Transportation or Secretary of State and others would be developing a specific instruction how to operate a space flight vehicle, a space vehicle, how to to license these kind of activities. So you all understand that taxi drivers have specific licenses. Every basically person who drives a car has a special driver's license. So that now the Department of Transportation in the United States will just also provide people and offer a license to drive a flight vehicle, a space vehicle, which is obviously fantastic. This is truly fantastic. In space transportation license, the economic vitality of American space industry is best served with a clear, predictable, flexible oversight process that promotes access to space and imposes minimal burdens on the industry. Administration supports the consistent, tailored authorization process for transportation missions in space, with only such conditions as are necessary for authorization to be consistent with public health, safety, safety of property, space sustainability, international obligations, national security, foreign policy, other national interests of the United States. So as far as I understand, there is already a certain conflict between the Biden administration and Elon Musk's SpaceX company over the commercial space flights. So there was a report a couple of days ago in American media that says that Biden wants new rules over commercial space flights. Biden administration will ask lawmakers to adopt a new framework for regulations as the United States grapples with the boom in companies such as Blue Origin, that's Jeff Bezos' Amazon leader, limited liability company, Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic Holding, Elon Musk's SpaceX, offering bring humans into space, into cosmos. And the legislative proposal would extend the Department of Transportation regulatory authority of spaceflight beyond launch and re-entry, giving officials powers to create rules designed to ensure the safety of humans when in orbit, on a commercial space station, or while visiting the moon. So yeah, this is the piece of that I was referring to, the Bloomberg company. So what else do I have here? Yeah, I think this is it with the framework, and let's get to the next topic, which is yeah, challenges of the United States in space. This is mostly economic challenges, mostly the challenges which basically refer to American position as a leader in the world economy and in space in particular. So I'm sorry, what was that? I will continue. Let's keep the questions for later. Let me first finish the presentation, and then we'll have a short discussion, probably a couple of answers and questions and answers. As for when it comes to challenges, when it comes to challenges to American leadership and basically American policies in space. So basically space, global economy rely on space systems pretty much critically, pretty much in their wholesome. They facilitate the entire global financial system, stock markets, communications, agriculture, transportation, and basically a lot of other commercial and civilian activities. Here's an interesting figure. So, and in June 2015, it was like 9 years ago, but still this is like the latest number available. The Department of Homeland Security report estimated 1.6 trillion of annual American businesses' revenues, which dependent on satellites. So basically, this is a huge part of American GDP. This is a huge share of American economy. Space systems are also a permanent and seamless component in the nation's critical infrastructure, as vital as the electrical grid or the highway system. Space is no longer the exclusive domain of great powers, nor does it remain a sanctuary for science and exploration free from conflict. In fact, the United States officials and others identify space as a war-fighting domain. Basically, the militarization of space is growing, even though there is a very specific document that prohibits weapons in space in 1967, Space Treaty, if I'm not mistaken. It doesn't mean that space systems cannot be a part of the non-lethal parts of the military systems. So adversaries are aware of American space superiority and understand the critical reliance on space systems to achieve American national interests. Many military and industry analysts believe it's prudent to plan for a future in which space is increasingly competitive, congested, and contested. So a number of figures, some numbers. The global revenue from space-based services annually exceeds $300 billion. Two-thirds in the commercial sector. Over 100 billion is annual revenues arises from commercial space data services, mostly direct to home television. So it's like cable space to television. Over 100 billion derives from commercial space equipment manufacturing. Finally, the government spends about 80 billion per year in space programs, mostly the NASA, the National Air and Space Agency, with the United States government spending roughly 60% of that 80 billion. So those space technologies have become dual use, so they can be used either for the military, for the government purposes, and for civilian and commercial purposes. And commercial space revenues dwarf investments by governments. And this creates a certain dilemma. The governments regulate their space industries for strategic reasons, but more and more nations also compete in the far less regulated commercial space market. There are 11 nations today in the world which have the space industrial capacity, develop, manufacture, launch, operate their own space systems. And more than 50 nations in the world have purchased and operate satellites, have partial elements of a space industrial base. So these are the American, European, Russian, and Japanese firms that are still dominant, but India and China possess comprehensive and rapidly growing space industries, especially China. And there are other diverse nations such as South Korea, United Arab Emirates, which are very actively pursuing the commercial space industries. So a key focus of American national security is the launch market. This is interesting because since 2006, a joint Boeing Lockheed Martin venture, which is called United Launch Alliance, ULA, under the Air Force contract, the contract with American Air Force, the military, has provided the national security space launch missions with a number of certified launchers, the Atlas and the Delta rockets. But there's the company which entered the market in 2015, which is called SpaceX, which stands for Space Exploration Technologies, which is gaining certification to compete for these national security space launches with its Falcon 9 launcher, while significantly lowering the costs of every launch. SpaceX is developing a more capable launch vehicle, the Falcon Heavy, which is certified by Department of Defense in June 2018. So that was basically Trump administration, and later awarded the missions under Phase 1A of the National Security Space Launches Program. All of the companies mentioned before and other ones, such as the Northrop Grumman and Blue Origin, they've all submitted bids for Phase 2 of the National Security Space Launch. But every company proposed its rocket design. So Vulcan is the United Launch Alliance, Omega is the Northrop Grumman, Falcon is the SpaceX, and New Glenn is the Blue Origin. That's Jeff Bezos, Amazon's respectively rockets which are offered. Many observers believe that the market dynamics have the potential to reduce prices, but they require monitoring to ensure the strategic access to certified US launchers. So this is a very specific topic which basically reprograms American government space industry into the commercial sector and raises the influence and raises the importance of commercial civilian space companies such as Blue Origin, SpaceX, and the others. So congested, which means that the space becomes overpopulated by the satellites. So another number of figures, and to my mind, a very interesting link, a very interesting what is it? A very interesting website about the catalog of Earth satellite orbits. There are over 2,000 active satellites on the orbit at the moment. Nearly all the satellites operate in just 3 key orbital regimes. So low Earth orbit, LEO, which has roughly 1,300 satellites. So low orbit is very close to Earth. It is, what is it, like 180 to 2,000 kilometers. Most of these satellites perform Earth observation, weather monitoring, or mobile communication services. There is the geosynchronous Earth orbit, GEO, which has about 430 satellites at roughly 36,000 kilometers altitude. At this altitude, satellites travel at the same rate as Earth's rotation, enabling a stationary dish on Earth to stare at a single point in the sky to receive a satellite signal. Most of those satellites conduct stationary telecommunication services, television broadcasting. Conversely, GEO satellites can stare downward at large portions of Earth, making this the preferred orbit for missions such as missile early warning, nuclear test detection, electronic intelligence. Between the low Earth orbit and geosynchronous Earth object are medium Earth orbit, MEO satellites. There are like 75 satellites over there, which are used for services such as global positioning system. Here is a very interesting explanation of all of these orbits. This is one of the NASA websites. So I will share this link with you later, and I invite you to look at this, and which was something which was especially, interesting for me is the last picture. That's how many space objects are there around Earth, the visualization. Because when I say 2,000 satellites, I believe this means the 2,000 actually acting satellites, but that figure doesn't include the number of satellites and the number of different space objects which are classified as debris, which are classified as garbage, which is on the orbit, and there is pretty much nothing that the governments and national space agencies can do about these debris, especially these is very small ones. But they, as you imagine, they travel on a huge speed, and they may actually damage the actual satellites, and they can actually make very expensive satellites worthless just because they can hit on the speed of a bullet, and I believe they might be as damaging the small pieces of garbage as obviously the huge pieces of garbage which are also in space. So this is an interesting, the whole small research with a number of references at the end. So probably you should have a look at this later if you are interested, obviously. So the 3 main orbits on Earth create restrictions similar to those created by lanes on a road. So basically, if you're driving a car, so you have to stick to one lane, because if you are changing the lanes, that means that you are creating a problem for other drivers. Particularly speaking, there are a limited number of slots, so-called slots, available for satellite operations. And this is obviously an international problem, at least a problem which requires international solution, probably not the legislation, but certain rules, how to share the space in space, how to share space in cosmos and in the Earth orbits. This basically what creates this so-called congestion in several ways. First is the sheer number of satellites requesting to occupy the available slots. Some prime locations for satellites already crowded. Second is a growing number of actors in space. This 1,000 more than 1,000 operational satellites are owned by 100 different governments and commercial entities from 50 nations. As I mentioned before, both the overall number of satellites and number of players is predicted to expand. And the third congestion issue is radio frequency allocation. To maintain an active radio link to the ground, so that you would have a direct connection and unhindered connection, all satellites must compete for a limited number of radio frequency assignments. So for US satellites, the Federal Communication Commission, the FCC, submits requests on behalf of satellite operators to the United Nations International Communications Union, ITU, which manages global radio frequency use for satellites. These frequencies are finite. Allocation is increasingly challenging, and the demand is obviously growing. So this is a very prospective field for research and for space activities. For 60 years of space activities, along with some explosive events in space, including the Chinese anti-satellite test in 2007, the 2009 Iridium Cosmos satellite collision, and the India's anti-satellite test in 2019, so basically 5 years ago, have left large quantities of uncontrolled debris in these orbital lanes, that what I mentioned already. So this includes tens of thousands of trackable items, like the size of a softball or bigger, and many millions, like 170 million, according to NASA, of smaller objects, any of which may disable or destroy a satellite. So this orbital collision prediction avoidance capacity is limited, but improving. The United States has the greatest national capability in both the debris tracking and collision warning, which is carried out by Combined Space Operations Center at a place called Vandenberg, California. So this Combined Space Operations Center has a growing number of data sharing agreements with allies with different countries in the world, and as well as commercial companies. The last problem is the contested, the contest, the competitive in space. So many defense experts consider space to be the ultimate military high ground, with particular importance to American national security operations. Adversaries have studied warfighting concepts focused on space systems as a particular American vulnerability. Some nations, in particular Russia and China, are pursuing different counter-space weapons capabilities. These are obviously American estimates. These even not like the official American estimate, but a reference to defense experts. So these are destructive and non-destructive weapons capabilities such as jammers, lasers, kinetic kill, anti-satellite systems, and cyber attack capabilities. And American satellites, it's no longer a sanctuary in space. So basically, American military space superiority can no longer be taken for granted. The Trump administration, and senior government officials openly declare space to be a warfighting domain. This is why Trump administration created a specific military space command, which was established in 2019 as a separate command, along with the Strategic Command and Cyber Command and others. And what is remarkable about the Biden administration, that this particular part of American policy was very, very important and prioritized without major changes, without major transformations. So the National Space Defense Center at the in Colorado, the joint interagency collaborative effort between Department of Defense, intelligence community, commercial industry. It is aimed to research American space vulnerabilities and develop tactics and doctrine to deal with potential attacks on space systems. The stakes are higher, far higher. More competitors are striving for advantage, and capabilities to disrupt satellites are proliferating. Some believe creating a separate service for space would help defend and protect American space systems. So the Space Force was created December 2020 2019 during the Trump administration. It became the sixth branch of the armed forces, established within the Department of Air Force after the enactment of the National Defense Authorization Act in 2020. The mission is to organize, to train, to equip space forces in order to protect American and allied interests in space. Before I forget, there was a very funny TV series, I believe it was on Netflix or somewhere, which was called Space Force with Steve Carell and John Malkovich as main characters. It is absolutely, you know, it's a comedy, obviously. It has very few things related to reality. Nonetheless, it is, as I mentioned before, this is interesting how, you know, the space exploration and space activities inspire artists and inspire the movie makers to make these such kind of things. But it was before. It was like in 2019, 2020. It coincided with the creation of Space Force, the actual Space Force, the actual Space Command. But nonetheless, this is remarkable. So space is more competitive, congested, and contested domain. Yeah, there was another conflict between the Biden administration and Elon Musk. You know that Elon Musk is a Republican. He supports Donald Trump, and he supports a lot of Republican initiatives. So they had a conflict about SpaceX's program called Starlink. Basically, Starlink was claiming that it may be subsidized by the government for $900 million. That's how much money they basically lost during their activities. And the Federal Communication Committee, which I mentioned earlier as the ultimate governmental organization responsible for the allocation of frequencies and other, you know, basic government regulations. The Federal Communication Commission said that after passing an initial application stage, SpaceX failed to demonstrate to the agency that it could deliver the promised service. And the agency said in a statement that funding the request would not be the best use of limited resources. The Federal Communication Committee followed a careful legal, technical, policy review to determine that this applicant had failed to meet its burden, said in a statement the chair of the Federal Communication Committee, Jessica Rosenworcel. I can open you this document. Again, this is a very boring American, you know, governmental document. It's only one page, but this is remarkable how much money, you know, are inside that industry. So this is like roughly $900 million, which the SpaceX and the Starlink is basically trying to reimburse and to get, you know, a subsidy for this huge amount of money, so that it would you know, continue to operate. So meanwhile, there are certain achievements of SpaceX after 2021. So in May of 2020, SpaceX launched the first crewed mission to the International Space Station in partnership with NASA, National Air and Space Agency. Mission was a success. The crew returned safely on Earth after spending over 2 months in space. Since then, SpaceX has completed several more successful crewed missions to the International Space Station. SpaceX has been developing its Starship spacecraft for several years, and in 2021, the company successfully launched several prototypes of the spacecraft. The launches were significant because they demonstrated the viability of the Starship design and brought SpaceX one step closer to realizing its goal of sending humans to Mars, to a different planet. Starlink internet service. In recent years, SpaceX was developing its satellite-based internet service called Starlink. Service aims to provide high-speed internet access to users all around the world. It has already a lot of users in Europe, in United States, obviously, particularly in rural and remote areas. So far, SpaceX has launched 1,500 Starlink satellites into orbit and has begun offering beta testing of the service to selected users. The SpaceX have been experimenting with the reusable rocket launch. SpaceX has successfully landed a Falcon 9 rocket after launching it into space. This was a significant achievement because it demonstrated the viability of reusable rockets, which could significantly reduce the cost of space launches. Basically, if you use the same rocket many times, at least I believe the Falcon 9 can be used like 9 or 10 times, you can basically reduce the cost of every launch pretty much like 90% or something. Since then, SpaceX has continued to develop and refine its reusable rocket technology and has successfully landed and reused multiple rockets. Finally, SpaceX has become a major player in commercial space industry, launching satellites and other payloads for a variety of customers. In 2021 alone, the SpaceX has launched dozens of commercial missions, including satellites for companies like Sirius XM and the US military. So coming to the military, here is first of all, yeah, here is the selected the most important programs which are funded by the Department of Defense. You know that there are certain problems in finalizing the American budget. That includes the military budget. Nonetheless, it is more interesting to look into the request that the Department of Defense is doing to ask for money, because this reflects the priorities of the Department of Defense rather than the whole administration. And here is the a little visual of the capabilities of Space Operations Command. That's one of the that's basically the ultimate entity, the government body, which is responsible for space operations. So Department of Defense develops, procures, deploys satellites in various orbits to enable space operations aligned with operations in other domains. In the United States, there is this whole specific topic as joint command, which ensures the interoperability between the different parts of the Army. So the space mission areas, the specific areas which are specific only for space missions, are the following: the space situational awareness, which characterizes the capabilities within the space domain; space force enhancement operations, which improve the effectiveness of military operations. They include such issues as intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, tactical warning, attack assessment, command, control, communications, position, velocity, time, and navigation, and environmental monitoring. There's space support, which provides essential capabilities vital to operate and sustain all elements of space forces. This includes the satellite operations, space lift, space forces reconstitution. The space control enables the freedom of action for friendly forces, and when required, negates or defeats interfering adversary capabilities and efforts. Space control involves the offensive, defensive actions required for U.S. and friendly forces space operations. Offensive control entails multiple negating actions and include deception, disruption, denial, degradation, and destruction. Space application covers the execution of combat operations through and from space. It includes ballistic missile defense, deployment of intercontinental ballistic missiles. So the budget, there are three major programs that are specifically remarkable inside the space military budget. One is the Global Positioning System Enterprise, the GPS. The GPS is a very interesting initiative. This is a very interesting project which was held in secret for many years, and it was developed during the Cold War, and it was one of those spin-off technologies which in early 90s were no longer needed as secret military project, secret military technology, and it was basically commercialized. And, a couple of years after, GPS proved to be a very successful commercial enterprise. You know that the most of the cars developed, manufactured in the United States and in Europe, and pretty much in many countries, Japan, Australia, and everywhere. They already have the GPS navigation installed, and this gives you, the routes, which Department of Defense budgets often referred to as space vehicles, due to their capacity for propulsion, provide worldwide 24-hour a day, all-weather, three-dimensional positioning, navigation, and timing information for military and civilian users. By law, the Secretary of Defense is responsible for assuring the sustainment and continuous operation of the GPS services. American Space Force is responsible for developing, maintaining, operating GPS space vehicles, satellites, basically, and ground control systems. The Department of Defense budget for 2024 year requests includes programs to modernize GPS satellites for civilian and military use, in addition to enhancing military user equipment and satellite control. So they requested $121.8 million. The follow-on satellites, like 119 million, GPS cryptographic security devices, 809, like 900 million, and requested funds to develop the GPS 3 follow-on satellites, $300 million. Another thing is space-based missile warning systems, basically the system that turns the red button whenever someone is launching a missile all around the world, so that the anti-ballistic missile systems would work and would intercept the missile. The Department of Defense explains that it modernizes space-based missile warning systems in order to rapidly, reliably detect, track strategic missile attacks on the United States, deployed forces, and its allies, regardless of launch origin. The modernization of efforts to perform these functions include the next generation overhead persistent infrared and resilient missile warning missile tracking programs. They're intended to respond to adversary effort to destroy, jam, disable satellites, degrade satellite data processing, according to testimony by the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy. So the Department of Defense requested almost $5 million for 2024, and a number of others, and satellite communication projects, which is like a number of different projects related to satellite communications missions for the armed services. Yeah, so it's probably the numbers are not as important. Here is a very interesting page from the website of NASA, National Air and Space Agency. This is the International Space Station program's greatest accomplishment. And this is like a list of all American partners in the world which contribute to international partnership on the International Space Station. So as you can see, these are the names of different agencies, and there are not one, but
Так, у нас проблема.
It seems like Pavle Alexandrovich has, yeah, he's here.
Oh yeah, there we go. Was it like 1 minute, or how long was I off? Okay. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so
I think even less than 1 minute. Just
okay
a
then.
few
Okay then.
moments.
So here's this I was describing this global. I think it's the VPN because some of the websites that I'm opening require the VPN. So this is what sometimes makes a glitch. No problem, I hope. So yeah, here's the global effort. The Roskosmos, the Russian launch control Baikonur, and the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, which is also contributing. I'm not sure. I don't know. I know that because of the sanctions and because of the deterioration, general deterioration in Russian-American relations, the space cooperation was probably also damaged. But I would have to look more, closely into it because space has always remained one of those, fields where Russia and the United States continued their cooperation regardless of the political disagreements. So this is truly remarkable that the Roscosmos is among the principal agencies, not only one of the many partners, but one of the principal agencies, principal partners of the United States. And I believe this is an interesting topic to look into, whether Roscosmos is still one of the key, which programs are still on between Russia and the United States in space. So this is a very interesting document which was published probably what is it, like 1 month ago, shortly before the end of the 2023, December 20. So as you know, that there is this specific government institution called the Space Council, headed by the Vice President Kamala Harris in the United States. I think Joseph Biden was one of his first moves in space policy to appoint Kamala Harris responsible for the space policy, national space policy. And here is a very long, actually, list of programs and very long list um, of initiatives that the United States are doing together with other partners in the world. So what to my mind is probably the most important ones. The Vice President announcing the following initiatives: the Artemis Accords, the State Department and the National Air and Space Agency will advance the so-called Artemis Accords principles through the collaborative work with signatories on practical challenges facing space actors with imminent plans to return to the moon, as well as engagement to multilateral fora to advance shared values. Artemis Accords have been signed by 33 nations to support the sustainable and safe exploration in space. The Artemis Accords there's this special, whoa, you see this? The special website devoted to Artemis Accords. This is really, we're not getting to do that, but this is the general list of rules that the countries are sticking to in cooperating in different space initiatives, in different space projects. So there's the registration of space objects, the transparency, the exchange of scientific data, and protecting the heritage, etc., etc. This is a very massive and full-scale international, legal project, which is led by the United States, which is very, very interesting development in the general, in general space exploration. So the United States have a special envoy for space in the United Nations. The United States are appointing the specific fellows in embassies all around the world for science, which will also be dealing with the space exploration and space cooperation in space projects with other countries. And a very interesting, another specific topic is the Next Generation Low Earth Orbit National Laboratory, which was directed by NASA in September 2022. it was a initiative to develop a plan for the next generation microgravity national lab in commercial space station world. NASA is working to develop the strategy to include consideration for establishing robust international partner pathways outlined in a specific report titled Models for Facilitating Government-Funded Activities in the Post-International Space Station Low Earth Orbit Ecosystem. One step in NASA's efforts to define and develop comprehensive strategy. Here is this report, the Models for Facilitating the Government-Funded Activities in the Post-International Space System Low Earth Orbit Ecosystem. Which is obviously a new project. Here we go, December 2023. A new project in American space policies, which is dealing with what the United States are going to do after the International Space Station was destroyed. Yeah, I think here we go. There's another. Yeah, it's just initial assessment, which was published 1 month earlier. So this website is much more informative, much more interesting for looking. So observation of cosmos to enable international academic partnerships. There's just a number of bilateral partnerships between the faculty and students in South Africa and the United States. The National Science Foundation, which is also a very important government agency for the Department of Energy, that announced another observatory being constructed in Chile with future operational partners, including more than 24 countries, apparently from the South America, which will collect its first photon in 2024, this year. There is space cooperation on the military topic, the collaboration, combined operations with allies and partners, including the Space Force Guidance for Global Partnerships, Regional Space Advisor, Combined Space Operations Initiative with Australia, Canada, France, Germany, New Zealand, United Kingdom. There is a specific space projects within an organization called AUKUS, which includes the Australia, United Kingdom, and United States. This is something that the United States are creating to compete against China in the military sphere. There's a very outstanding and very important space security cooperation with Japan. So they are integrating 2 optical space domain awareness payloads and 2 Japanese-built satellites in quasi-zenith satellite system. It will augment the United States' ability to detect, track, identify space objects while providing increased sensor diversity, capacity, and architecture resiliency. Also, in 2024, there's a specific security cooperation with Norway. Our cooperation enabled integration of 2 payloads on Norwegian-built and flagged Arctic satellite broadband mission satellites. I think it's interesting to discuss it with experts on Arctic and the whole, issue about the Arctic research and the conflict in the Arctic. And finally, the satellite communication. So there's this leading international partner working group to support narrowband satellite communication analysis of alternatives. There are 12 partner nations contributing to these requirements, utility plans for technical satellite communication. There are a lot of efforts concerning the United States space economy and the creation of well-paying jobs, not just the paying jobs, but the well-paying jobs. So the following initiatives: the launch and re-entry regulations. Department of Transportation will pursue efforts to reduce international duplication and dual licensing of launches and re-entries, which kind of makes sense. Promoting safety multilaterally for launch and re-entry. Foreign investments, there's a specific Select USA Investment Summit, which is going to be held in June 2024 to tailor and to make sure that the United States and the other countries, the other partners, are investing in the most effective way into the space projects so that they would not be duplicating, so that they would be very prospective, that would bring a lot of new resources, financial resources, and workforce resources for the benefit of the United States. International commercial space cooperation. Department of Commerce will strengthen commercial space diplomacy efforts intended to deepen American international commercial space partnerships, including bilateral, multilateral agreements. A public release of space manufacturing technology report. This is, goes in line with American, mania of writing and publishing a lot of reports. The report will be posted in the website of NASA. And new public-private partnership, which basically goes in line with the general policy of regulating the commercial civilian space activities. Obviously, there are a lot of efforts in international cooperation related to such projects as climate crisis, natural disasters, extreme weather events. So there was announced a number of different events and conferences and other forms of cooperation which were supposed to be held in 2024 and in upcoming years. Promoting radio astronomy on the moon. The National Science Foundation is working with NASA to develop a report on planned radio astronomy facilities. Improved space weather forecasting. Implementation of the plan of the National Space Weather Strategy and Action Plan, which brings together the departments with agencies to continue to build capabilities to improve the safety and security of the United States to protect the lives of astronauts during space weather storms. And finally, I have a number of figures for you concerning the space economy. We had a very interesting project within the Laboratory of Applied Research about space economy. And if that topic is still relevant, I would that would be very interesting to look into these websites. So here is a very interesting diagram. The gross output that represents the market value of the goods and services produced by the industry, and which is similar in the concept of revenue. So this research was published in the summer of 2023, and it only deals with the numbers which were published after which contain 2021. So this is not much about the Biden administration, but nonetheless, they reflect the general trend of the development of the space economy statistics. So this is for 9 years, almost 10 years. As you can see, the general, growth of the space economy in general. Obviously, in 2020, there was a slight recess due to COVID, most likely, but nonetheless. But what is remarkable here is that, you see that the governmental sector is growing mostly actively. So it came from like 29%, roughly 30%, to over 40% in 2012 to 2021. Another thing is that, the manufacturing remains pretty much the same, and the information technologies are slightly reducing, but that in line with the general growth of the whole economy. So yeah, there are a lot of numbers here. I believe that we are all tired, and numbers are probably not the not the most exciting part of the presentation, not the most exciting thing to talk about. And the last but not least thing that I wanted to mention is the movies. Movies, my favorite part of the American politics, because movies are always reflecting the general political thought and the general direction of political trends, political developments. So the movie, which was just released last year, and this is, I believe, the movie which is inspired by not only by space explorations and space travels, but also, as you can see, this is from the IMDb description, a biopic about an actual astronaut who's still alive, Jose Hernandez, and his path from a farm worker to becoming an engineer and an astronaut. So not only that this is like an immigrant, and this is an immigrant case, which is, you know, injected in the in movies in the political agenda, but it is also a story about American dream, how a person from a very, very humble background became an astronaut, and astronauts are obviously very respected and very important people in the United States. And the tale of perseverance, community sacrifice to accomplish a seemingly impossible dream, which is really impossible for you know, immigrants and farmers and people without any specific background. So yeah, this continues, you know, a list of many American movies devoted to space. When I was thinking about which movies were made in the last, what is it, like 3 years, I couldn't think of, you know, this one and the movie called Space Force, the series called Space Force that I've already mentioned. But before that, there were movies called Interstellar and a very funny movie called Martian. Well, funny, it was like a epic movie about travel to Mars with Matt Damon. But those were before Trump. Those were during the Obama administration, and Biden administration at some point is continuing the work which was done by Obama administration before 2017. So to sum up, not that Biden administration made any, you know, significant breakthroughs. One of the key issues that Biden administration have been dealing with is the new form of government regulations, new form of government related relations with the private sector, the development of the rapid development of the civilian space capabilities, space activities. They're beginning a very important part of developing the anti-satellite capabilities developed by other countries, which is going to be a very important political issue in the upcoming years. They are developing a space economy, which is also a very important part of the international relations in the upcoming years. And that's pretty much it. So I invite you to start a discussion if you have collected any questions.
Thank you very much,
Yeah, thank you very much.
for the presentation. And let's proceed to discussion. Diana, would you manage the process?
Yeah, we have already had 3 questions from our participants. First of all, the first question was from Litvinova Anastasia. She says that she's a second-year student of international relations at the Siberian Federal University in Krasnoyarsk. And the question is, don't you consider that the new US approach to space policy involving the deployment, sorry, I missed the letters, involving the deployment of a large group of satellites in orbit to monitor climate change, increase the possibilities to detect and recognize hostile actions in space, is primarily aimed at creating conditions for a victorious US war both in space and on Earth? I can copy the question and send it to chat now for you to reread it if it's.
Yeah, well,
Oh, wow.
this is interesting because, you know, based on many developments in not only space, but general, you know, technological advances in the military field, the general trend is that it is very difficult to create a military technology per se. Most likely, the technology will have certain military applications along with many, many different functions that it will have, which would be very beneficial for commercial use. So I don't think that the military part is is the only one. However, it is obviously a very important one, and however, it is obviously very a lot of attention is done to use, you know, the military operations. I was actually surprised to see that the global positioning system satellites were still controlled by the American Department of Defense, because I was thinking of GPS as a commercial technology, and the military would be one of the users. However, obviously not, you know, probably the civilians would not have access to all range of the specific services, but nonetheless, the Department of Defense still controls and still responsible for the stability and stable functioning of the global positioning system satellites in the United States. Yes, so obviously, you know, this new American power, if I may say so, relies not primarily on military force, but on a very sophisticated combination of military capabilities supported by civilian and commercial technologies. So this is a very important topic to look into in the future, if that answers your question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pavel Alexandrovich. And we will move to live questions, I would say. And I would like to give the floor to Tatiana Filimonova. Tatiana, could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Tatiana Filimonova from Moscow State University. I'm a graduate student at economic faculty. Pavel Alexandrovich, thank you for your presentation. I would like to ask you, how would you estimate the real independence of Elon Musk in his policy, in his in management of the company, maybe, and how do you think does his company has a risk to be nationalized in the case of further confrontation between him and the government?
I don't think that nationalization is an option, just based on the general experience in the United States. So I don't think that it might be nationalized. So Elon Musk is a very talented entrepreneur. So he is, space technologies is not the only company that he manages and he owns. So he is, you know, one of those entrepreneurs who are very risky and who like to make a lot of experiments. For example, very few people still understand what was about Elon Musk purchasing Twitter and this social network, which is prohibited in Russia, but nonetheless very famous and very widespread in the United States. And I don't think that he himself understands. He just has a lot of resources. He is quite influential, I believe. He possesses so many resources that it is inevitable for him to communicate with the government, because he is at some point holds a monopoly, and he has to rely on the government support. At this point, he has certain disagreements with the Biden administration. And I've mentioned the one about the space travel, another one with the Federal Communication Commission, which refuses to reimburse him for the $900 million losses in Starlink. And but American political system may change in November. And if a Republican candidate wins the elections, the Elon Musk will have much more much more room for his entrepreneurial experiments in the future. So I believe that, answering your question, there is this mutual influence. Elon Musk is a very influential figure in American, economy, among American entrepreneurs. But he is very much dependent on the government. And this is a very interesting case of their standoff against the government. So it's going to evolve in the upcoming decades. It doesn't look like Elon Musk will stop, and he will definitely come up with something new and something innovative.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we have two more questions. The first one is from Anna Nikolskaya, and the question is, could you please tell how is significant the difference between space strategies of Trump's and Biden's administration? So the question is tightly connected with the previous one, and how the space strategy of the USA may change after the elections 2024.
I would say that it's my perception. I would say that Donald Trump was much more prioritizing the military sphere. So I've already mentioned that he established the specific space command, which is a very interesting development, because space has never been an independent command, and establishing a space command means that there is a specific independent part of the military forces which are doing the space operations, and space operations in return are becoming a much more critical element of the military strategy. It seems that Biden is not that much fan of the military element of the space element of the military strategy. And Biden's military strategy so far was not very, I would say, technologically advanced. So he was not, he did not make a lot of changes in the military strategy. If the Biden administration remains in power, so I would say that they would continue to develop this government-private partnership in order to create a more powerful partnership that includes the government and the military entities, along with commercial and civilian companies, to create something called American space power. And a great deal of this strategy will be dependent on how the other space powers will behave, in particular China and India, because I'm sorry, Biden administration has been quite actively cooperating with the European Space Agency, the ESA, and in general, the United States have been much more became much closer to Europe in the technological sphere and in space in particular. And in Europe, that is also includes, the military capabilities, the civilian capabilities. Europe doesn't have European Elon Musk, but they also have a lot of companies, a lot of manufacturers who can contribute to these general transatlantic space capabilities, whatever that is. And if Trump wins the elections, I would say that Trump would again try to reverse this transatlantic direction of American policies. And I'm not sure how it will, well, definitely these kind of projects would be probably less active. If Nikki Haley wins the elections, there is like 5 to 10% chance that Nikki Haley will be there. This will be the most unpredictable thing, because Nikki Haley has been a very opponent to Trump policies. She was a representative of the United States to the United Nations, which makes her gives her a good background in foreign policy. but what exactly is she's going to do in space policies? I don't think that she is at this point is thinking about it. I think her major task right now is winning South Carolina and this Super Tuesday, and winning the Republican nomination more broadly. And she is not thinking about foreign policy at this moment, in January. So we will get back to that if she wins the nomination in, what is it, like in 8 months.
Yeah, thank you very much. And now we're moving to the next question. It's from Alina Shinkao, and this is the curious question I have ever seen. Who do you think is more loved and supported by people when it comes to space projects? Biden's administration or Elon Musk? Thank you.
Who is more supported by the people? Whose policies?
Yeah, who is more supported by the people and loved by the people?
In space policies? Well, obviously Elon Musk, because, well, Elon Musk is in a position to make experiments. Elon Musk in a position to put a Tesla car on a rocket and launch it into space, and just to make, a huge event out of this. And Biden is in a position to order to make another bureaucratic document, which, nobody's going to read except for myself and my colleagues. So yeah, obviously Elon Musk is some sort of a rock star. He's obviously a person very very influential, not only for the space explorations and space experiments, but for his general performance, for his general image that he's doing. And Biden, I don't think that Biden is a prominent. Biden will not be remembered as a prominent space actor. Biden will be probably remembered as the oldest president so far.
Thank you very much. And we have 2 more questions.
Okay.
And the next one is from Kotova Anna. She is the postgraduate student at St. Petersburg State University, and she's interested in the issue of the extraction of space resources, which the United States has been promoting for a long time. She gives an example. One asteroid may contain reserves of oil, gold, and maybe an oil and iron that exceed the global annual production of Earth. As the result, a very paradoxical situation arises: the success of sorry, when I move the mouse, the letters skip a little bit. So the success of missions to explore celestial bodies will lead to a decrease in their commercial attractiveness, which in turn raises the question of the economical feasibility for investors in investing in space missions. Therefore, what are the US motives for extracting space resources if, in accordance with the laws of economics, such a significant increase in the supply of metals will inevitably lead to lower prices?
Oh, what's the economic question? Well, my perception is that space is a great unknown. So whatever, whenever there is a space exploration, whenever there is a basic research of space resources, whenever there is a scientific approach to understanding what is space, why in what way certain space objects might be valuable for Earth, for humans, for certain economic production, for different economic processes. We're talking about the unknown. We're talking about something that nobody knows. And again, there's people like Elon Musk, and there's organizations like NASA, which have resources to launch a rocket, to launch a mission, either with the humans or with the robots, just to explore. And the result of this exploration may be very, very surprising, and it may lead to some further developments and to some further productions and economic discoveries. So obviously, this is not the kind of investment. This goes into into the category of a very highly risky investment. So whenever you have extra free resources, extra finances, you may invest it into something which will guarantee you to receive very little profit. But if you are as risky as Elon Musk, for example, you may invest it in something unknown, which may lead to total failure, but there is a chance that it will result in a huge profit, and it will bring you a lot of money and fame and other resources, which is basically what is going on right now. So, but again, this is an economic question, and economy is not my strongest side.
Thank you very much. And I think the best question to finish our election today comes from Brazil, from Raquel Misagia. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the surname. PhD in Strategic Studies from the Federal Fluminense University. She would like to know to what extent the competition between major powers affects international cooperation and impacts the development of middle powers in the space sector.
Well, this is a great question. Again, space is becoming very integrated into many different, many other processes. So I wouldn't. It is difficult to discuss space, apart from all major elements of this competition. Obviously, it becomes a huge part. Obviously, space is very perspective in the field of recognizing objects on Earth, and this is a combination of the space satellites, the space activities, together with some artificial intelligence developments and advances in artificial intelligence, where you just create a special algorithm and you create a special technology which recognizes on a very high resolution different objects on Earth, which becomes a very perspective, task for economy, for military, for international competition. This is obviously a very important issue. Another thing is the communications, and there was somewhere I'm afraid I forgot. I've already lost this link, but there was a visualization of how many only Starlink satellites have been developing around Earth. And within like 5 or 7 years, the amount grew from just a few dozens to more than 1,000. Only Starlink, not to mention all other satellites, only Starlink satellites. Obviously, this is a growing industry. Obviously, this offers Starlink a very a big leverage, a huge advantage in the speed of internet connection, in the broadband, in the quality of internet supply. So this is a direct effect. The space activities have direct effect on great powers competition, and this is not something which will be over soon. This competition will provoke the great powers for new developments, for new steps in the upcoming years, and this is going to be a very long term competition, which is not quite clear how will end. I can tell you already that, and this is not based only on space technologies, but related to other technologies, that United States, together with European Union, are engaging the countries from Asian Pacific region, the ASEAN nations, to cooperate, to participate in their economic production, to cooperate in their economic manufacturing and production of services and goods. And this is all aimed at degrading China as a regional power and obviously as a global power. But China is not, waiting for this to happen. And obviously China is doing certain actions on its own, and China is trying to compete. This is also one of the lines of competition between, the United States and China, which is absolutely fantastic, absolutely remarkable, and very challenging for international researchers such as yourselves. So yeah, short answer is this will give certain leverage, certain advantage in military field, in economic field to different actions. But I don't think that me or any person can right now say which way it will go in the long term. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we have answered, Pavel Alexandrovich has answered all the questions. And Vasily Alexandrovich, would you like to sum up?
Well, Pavel Alexandrovich, thank you very much for your for your presentation and discussion. It seems to me that it was very useful, and I'm looking forward to our new meetings and your participation in our winter school and other meetings. And if we have no questions, I think we'll conclude our work today and we'll proceed tomorrow. Thank you very much, Pavel Alexandrovich. Thank you very much, Diana, and all participants. See you tomorrow at 11 a.m. according to our schedule.